Mega Ditto. Most people think it's impossible because how can you take such a perfect, beautiful little specimen and transform it into something even more powerful? Hello everyone, my name is Roberto Solis Ráfagas de la Evolución Magnífica. That is the pun to my username because you may simply call me Robby for short. People online know me as the internet's premier Ditto enthusiast, yet I have never done a dedicated video on my precious child. That changes today, as we explore how a mega evolution for Ditto could actually work. On July 23rd, 2025, Black Boy tweeted the following. My proposal for Mega Ditto. He's the same little guy. However, he doesn't transform into whatever Pokemon he's facing in battle, but instead can transform into any Pokemon you want. Now, as the internet's premier Ditto enthusiast, Black inquired my thoughts on the matter, and I obviously approved. However, even if it worked like the way that Black described, transforming into any Pokemon you want would be a logistical nightmare. Game Freak would have to code all 1,025 Pokemon in the franchise, plus alternate forms, regional variants, and every other form available.
You know, I'm just not feeling this one.
Which in this day and age would be impossible because they're not going to spend their precious resources on that when they have billionaire investors to make money for.
Oh.
But let's say that they don't need to include every single Pokemon, only the ones that are part of the regional Pokedex for that game. What ability would Ditto end up with if the Pokemon you chose has multiple? Would it be a regular ability or a hidden ability? We can simplify this issue more in Legends ZA because this game doesn't have abilities, but then how would the Ditto in question know which moves to have? You would need to make those decisions on the fly, and all within a 60-second timer in turn-based battles. At that point, I would just create a build for that Pokemon and include that one on my team. This was treated months before Legends ZA released, right after Dragonite had been announced to receive a Mega Evolution. We obviously know that Ditto is, unfortunately, not in the game, but this idea has potential, though it needs to be tweaked to fit the regular battle mechanics. Ditto can't really function with the battle mechanics of Legends ZA, especially considering that this game doesn't have abilities, save for select Pokemon who have their abilities coded in passively. Aegislash has stance change, for example, but in Legends ZA it simply changes into its blade form before attacking. Zygarde changes into its complete form due to its ability Power Construct, but that is instead coded into the game by simply reaching half health. Primal Groudon and Kyogre have their abilities passively coded in as well, affecting the weather around you and giving them immunities to water and fire, respectively. In order for Ditto to be included in Legends ZA, they would need to decide whether it transforms on command or as soon as it's sent out. Personally, for this game, I think it should be on command by selecting the move Transform. That would give the player the choice to let their Ditto either transform into the Pokemon in front of them or Mega Evolve. In order to better understand my vision, let's look ahead towards Pokemon Champions, which I believe will be the future hub for competitive battling as we move into Worlds 2026. Under regular circumstances, Ditto without its hidden ability is very frail because you need to spend one turn to transform into your opponent, essentially giving them a free turn of damage. This could be remedied by having Ditto hold Metal Powder or Quick Powder, which doubles its defense or speed stat, respectively. These items, however, lose their effectiveness once Ditto transforms, wasting a held item slot that could be better utilized by another more helpful item.
She just doesn't have the vernacular that she thinks she possesses. Somebody lied to her several times, and she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort.
Ditto has only ever had one competitive build available, which includes the following requirements. Impostor as its ability to transform immediately as it is sent out. Maximum effort values in HP because it's the only stat that Ditto does not copy. Holding a Choice Scarf to raise the speed of the opponent it just copied, allowing it to attack first. Maximum EVs in defense, and a Relaxed Nature that boosts defense while hindering speed. To take the least amount of damage from Struggle once it runs out of PP. And maximum IVs in every stat except speed, which would be an IV of 0 to potentially outlast an opponent's Ditto with the same setup in a Struggle off. During Regulation G matches in Scarlet and Violet, Ditto garnered some popularity as a counter for the restricted legendary Pokemon of this format, which allowed you to have up to 2 restricted Pokemon. Restricted Pokemon are basically legendary Pokemon. They're more powerful than every other member of your team. Having Ditto on your team was a very risky strategy due to its unpredictability, because Ditto is heavily reliant on what team your opponent brings, but that becomes a non-issue when you are virtually guaranteed to encounter a super powerful Pokemon in every match. This puts Ditto in a very unique position because it can copy the stats, ability, and moves of an opposing restricted Pokemon to practically give the player a third restricted Pokemon. Plus, that Choice Scarf guarantees that your Ditto will move faster than the Pokemon it just copied. There was another build for Ditto during this regulation that included Bright Powder as the held item instead, but the Choice Scarf has always been the tried and true method for utilizing Ditto in battle. If the Pokemon Company wanted to introduce a Ditto Knight, however, they would need to incentivize players to utilize Ditto in a different way than the meta for competitive battling allows. The way Mega Evolution is selected in turn-based battles is by activating the button before choosing the Pokemon's move. By having Ditto hold a Ditto Knight instead of a Choice Scarf, you could incentivize the player to have Limber as its ability instead of Imposter. The issue here is that selecting Transform would simply have Ditto transform into the Pokemon that is directly across from it, which is no different than what Ditto is already capable of. I would suggest treating the Ditto Knight similar to a Z Crystal, which replaces a Pokemon's move with its Z version, like when Primarina's Sparkling Aria turns into Oceanic Operator, or like when Zygarde's Core Enforcer changes into Nihilite after it Mega Evolves. Choosing to Mega Evolve Ditto could replace Transform with Megamorphose, a play on the words Mega and Metamorphose that also references its French name. This Mega Evolved Ditto would then copy the types, ability, moves, and stats of the opponent, just like a regular Ditto, but you get to decide which Pokemon from your opponent's team to transform into, even if it's not in the field. That way, you don't have to decide what moves to use or what ability to have, because the whole point of Ditto is to copy. The Ditto Knight could also sense the energy of the opponent's nearby Megastone, allowing it to transform into the Mega Evolution the opponent has included on their team if that Pokemon is holding one. If there is more than one Pokemon holding a Megastone on the opponent's team, then you get to decide which one Mega Ditto transforms into. If none of the opponent's Pokemon are holding a Megastone, then Ditto would simply transform into one Pokemon of your choosing as normal. This gimmick would work similar to the Looker Trainer card in TCG Pocket, which reveals all the supporter cards in the opponent's deck. In this case, you are essentially grabbing one of your opponent's Pokemon as your own, while simultaneously revealing their moveset and other details. This benefit is perhaps not super advantageous in official VGC tournaments because they have open team sheets, but you still have the potential to acquire a very powerful Pokemon. Since Ditto could have Limber for its ability, it would be left vulnerable to damage during that first turn of transformation, meaning we would need to figure out a way to counteract that damage. Some Mega Evolutions have received exclusive abilities before, such as Kangaskhan, whose ability is Parental Bond. I propose giving Mega Ditto an exclusive ability called Mega Costume, a name which I feel fits the convoluted nature of this ability. Every Mega Evolution redistributes its stats by adding 100 points to its base stat total. Because Ditto copies all of the opponent's stats except HP, Mega Ditto could simply add 100 points to its base HP, making it a base of 148. This would allow Mega Ditto to tank significant damage during that first turn of transformation, particularly because the Mega Costume ability would include a similar clause to Mimikyu's ability Disguise, which protects the Pokemon from one attack once per battle.
Do you have any ibuprofen? I got a headache.
After the Mega Dimension DLC, Mimikyu was included in the game, and its ability is coded in passively, just like Aegislash. Unlike Disguise, however, that protection from attacks would only happen on the turn it transforms. It would not receive this protection if it switches in at full health for another Pokemon, nor if it regains full HP, nor for any other reason. If we circle back to Legends ZA, Mega Costume could be coded in passively by giving Mega Ditto frames of invulnerability that lasts for a couple of seconds after the Mega Evolution animation. At the end of the day, game mechanics, especially battles, require balancing. Much like how Mimikyu received a nerf in Sword and Shield because players would combine Disguise with a Focus Sash to have 2 free turns of setup. Since Mega Evolution is on a timer in Legends ZA, Mega Ditto would return to its original form after the Mega Gauge runs out, allowing the player to use Transform as normal. If you wanted to use Mega Ditto after it already used Transform, we would need to switch Ditto out before Mega Evolving it. To further balance this now tanky purple blob, the target Pokemon also cannot be fainted, and Megamorphos would keep Ditto transformed the entire time, even when switched out. We could flavor this as Ditto being unable to transform into anything else during Mega Evolution, especially because the effect is temporary. Which brings me to our final talking point. How would Mega Ditto fit into the lore for Mega Evolution? Mega Evolution is referred to as an evolution that transcends all other evolution because it's only able to occur in Pokemon that are no longer capable of evolving further. Ditto technically fits such a category, as it is a Pokemon that has never been known to evolve into or from any other Pokemon. Mega Evolution also requires the bond of a trainer to keep the transformation under control, which is why it would be difficult for Ditto to transform into anything else. Mega Ditto's body is filled with so much mega power that it doesn't allow it to willingly transform into anything else until it reverts back to its original form. Think of this Mega Evolution as polymer clay, which hardens when it's heated up. Mega Evolution is said to come from the ultimate weapon that was fired 3,000 years ago, which harnessed Xerneas's and Yveltal's power, hence the reason why almost every Mega design has features that resemble the letter X or Y. Yes, I watched that entire 2-hour-long presentation from the guy that theorized that every Mega is either X or Y shaped. And yes, I am obsessed, and it's now the first thing that I look for with every new Mega Evolution. Based on that assessment, I think it would be really interesting if Ditto's Mega Evolved form was similar to its unreleased evolution, Animon.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. Je proclame le soleil.
Mega Ditto could grow a horn-like protrusion from the top of its head that is slightly curved to resemble the Mega Evolution symbol, similar to the board that Mega Tatsugiri sits on. This Mega Evolution would need to be designed in a way that is goofy and cute, but still memorable despite the very short appearance on screen. And going in a similar direction to Mega Starmie would be a great place to start. We know that Ditto will likely never receive a redesign of any kind because it has the ability to transform into anything and anyone, and that is why I love my little guy. Ditto is a representation of the famous Barbie girl motto, "Be who you want to be," and the versatility of endless possibilities is a positive message for everyone. I have loved Ditto from the first recollection I have of me playing Pokemon as a kid, and my love for it has only grown stronger. The first local Comic-Con that I attended had a Ditto plush that I saw on a booth from the corner of my eye, and it was love at first sight. I have never seen a Ditto plush like the one I have anywhere else, and it is my most prized possession. To this day, this plush toy sits in the background of some of my other videos, and I hope that you can better understand why I love this little creature so very much. With Pokopia announced as a new side adventure in the Pokemon universe, we get to experience a completely new side of Ditto's personality that we've never even seen before. So an entirely new game centered around my favorite purple blob is better than any redesign I could have asked for, and definitely an even more memorable experience for everyone involved. Why is everyone pinging me? There has to be something about my child. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate you being here. Bye!